Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is 6 o'clock here in the morning, Calgary, Alberta. Tuesday morning, October the 26th, I believe it is, 25th. And I'm glad to be here. This is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another. We're on for 30 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. And the chat room is open. I did pop the link into there to what we're talking about, Soul Expressions, abuserecovery.com. And it's a website. That's exactly what it is. It's www.soul-expressions-abuse-recovery.com. And this website's really all dealing with child sexual abuse or sexual abuse. And this woman's put together a lot of great information here. So hopefully you will go and check that out. We're looking at depression, and that's where we left off yesterday. All dealing with child sexual abuse or sexual abuse, right? So. Very interesting information. She has a lot on here about, just really the whole issues surrounding, healing, right? Art, there's art, recovery rituals, maintaining recovery, how to forgive, self-esteem, poetry, disassociation, healing the inner child. That's kind of what what sort of drew me to the website was healing the inner child section. So we'll be looking at that. But I just wanted to kind of go through a few things about what happens to people, a lot of survivors who may, be experiencing some of these things, like, any one of us could be experiencing depression or eating disorders or any number of things, right? So that's why I'm looking at this stuff. It's really for my healing journey, and hopefully it helps somebody else. So, I'm not a counselor or a therapist, and you have to listen to my shows at your own discretion. Like, I'm just a private citizen paying to do these shows here on Blog Talk Radio, and I'm just a survivor, so you have to listen to all of my shows at your own discretion, because I'm talking about abuse. It's a very sensitive subject. You have to know what's good for you to listen to and make the right choice. And if you think the topics of abuse bother you, then you need to turn the show off, right? And young people under the age of 18, you need to have permission to listen to my show. It's not for younger children. None of my shows are. And so if you're under the age of 18, just have an adult, someone who's older, who's an adult, who can help you make a decision by listening to the show with you to see if it's something age appropriate for you, right? So we'll get right into this in where we left off yesterday, talking about the symptoms of depression. And we can kind of look through here. It doesn't mean we need to be diagnosing ourselves, right? But I know that most people probably can agree that they probably have had some depression in their lifetime, and some of us more than others, and possibly, have problems with depression, like serious problems. I know that my mom did. That's what I was talking about yesterday. And myself, I had problems too with being in depressed states and whatnot. So she's got some great information here, and lots of telephone numbers and organizations that actually help people who may feel that they have some type of clinical depression or just really depressed and not doing well, right? So there is good information here on this website. So she says common depressive symptoms are sleep disturbances, feeling sadness more than half of the time, thoughts of hurting yourself, right? Appetite changes, we were talking about that yesterday morning. Difficulty concentrating, seeing yourself or ourselves as a problem cause for others, having low self-esteem, thinking that, always saying we're sorry, making apologies for ourselves. That's where we left off yesterday. And loss of interest is another one. No interest in daily activities or activities you used to enjoy. Decreased interest in people, friends, sex, etc. That's a huge issue for people. I know that loss of interest, that can happen to people. You just get so tired, maybe, especially if you're in an abusive environment or, still being abused, it's kind of hard to have interest in anything. I know that growing up, as a child, I really just didn't have a whole lot of interest in anything except for getting high, especially after I hit about the age of 12, because I was just so down from just being in this abusive environment my whole life, and that was just my state, my normal state, to be down and to be, not all that interested in things. I wasn't interested in trying to pick up to learn a musical instrument as a child, or try join a sports team or anything like that, because I was being abused. So I just, my main interest was just to escape the abuse, and really, instead of running away and taking off down the street, I actually just ran away in my mind and started doing a whole lot of drugs and being high all the time. But I did have really no interest in much. And even as an adult, it's hard for me to have interest in things. Like sometimes I I stay extremely busy with what I'm doing, which is my mission, right? But as far as having an interest to, pick up an art course or something, to me, I sometimes don't have the energy for that, and I think it's just because all my energy is expended trying to just deal with this aftermath of the abuse. So I know that I still have some issues with that. Feeling restless, anxious is another one. Can't sit still, fidgety, can't stay seated, have to pace, move around constantly, panic attacks. That can happen to people. I know, I have a lot of anxiety problems, but I don't think it's about sitting still or fidgety. I'm not necessarily fidgety or can't stay seated. But as far as having panic attacks, I think I have some like minor anxiety. It's not even a major anxiety because I can go and do things and get on the bus and with a crowd of people, and I don't have like too many anxiety problems. But if I'm facing something that I've never done before, or something where I'm on the spot, like a job interview or things like this, things that can make anybody feel nervous, I think I might become a little bit more nervous than maybe most people, just because I'm on the spot, and having to it's almost feeling like, well, I'm not good enough for this job, and here I am sitting in this interview type of thing. And so my stuff mainly stems from anger and also from low self-esteem. So, I don't have too many anxiety problems, which is great, but I know that some people probably do. It's a pretty harsh situation, growing up abused and then having to deal with all these aftermath of stuff, you know what I mean? It's not easy on people. And feeling restless and anxious, that was one. That's the one we just looked at. No energy, loss of energy, can't get homework done, can't get housework done because it requires too much energy, tired and slow. And that's a huge issue for people that have been abused, especially like if they're still in the environment, an abusive environment, Like, I mean, as an adult, I'm not at all in an abusive environment, you know what I mean? Like, I got myself a decent adult life, Like, I don't allow people to mistreat me, and I don't stay in abuse, and I just, my life's pretty good now. But when I was growing up, a loss of energy. I remember watching my mother, because she was being abused. She was abused as a child, and then she was in this ridiculous, horrific marriage, with my dad, and had all these kids that she didn't want. And they brought up on abuse charges, and they went, there's just so many problems, like with their marriage, and so many problems with the family. So my mom, quite often she had a hard time doing anything, and for some time, and she was physically ill too, and not only just, mentally depressed and mentally, messed up because she was abused, she was physically, faltering as well, like all the time. She was in and out of the hospital all the time with all kinds of surgeries, and she was not supposed to have any more children after my brother, and he was 7 years older than me, and she ended up having 5 more children, but only 2 made it. So me and my sister actually survived, but 3 babies in between, along with the 2 of us. She was 3 of those babies were born stillborn. So my mother was just continually becoming pregnant, and the doctors told her absolutely do not have any more children after my brother was born, because they said, you'll die, your children will die, you'll die, and who's going to look after these other 5 children, right, if you die. But my dad just kept forcing himself on her, and they neither one of them would do anything about birth control. And so she just didn't have a lot of energy for many reasons, right? And but it wasn't sometimes just the physical stuff. She just didn't have the energy because she was just so worn out and worn down by the abuse, And so a lot of times, laundry wouldn't get done. And I remember being a young child, like around, I don't know, especially around 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, and just wearing like my pajamas to school, wearing really dirty clothes, because my mother would just lay in bed and she would just cry and cry and cry, and then she'd get up and beat me, and then she'd go back to bed and cry and cry and cry. That was a cycle for quite a few years. She was either in bed crying or just not wanting to get out of bed because she was just so depressed, or she was up raging and hurting me or hurting somebody, and causing all problems for her children. And it was pretty harsh situation. But I know that feeling myself, that whole no energy type thing. I go through that actually quite a bit because my emotional health, my physical health is not that great. And so quite often, especially if I've had like something that happened to me, or something just didn't go right, just didn't go the way that it should have, and I'll end up if it really does hit me pretty hard. Whereas, most people I think deal with things in life, they just bounce back. They're like, oh well, I won't let that get me too down, and they just bounce back, and their energy levels are pretty good, and they physically take care of themselves. And for abuse survivors, people who've been abused and had such a hard time in life, quite often we're not taking care of ourselves physically, we're not taking care of ourselves emotionally, we're not getting the rest that we need, we're not getting the exercise we need, and so many times, like I myself physically can't do a whole lot of exercise. I was talking about that yesterday. Just because my body is just so screwed. Both my hips actually are screwed, but one of them is worse than the other one, and my ankle is screwed, and so walking even is just painful for me. People say, oh, go for a walk, It's like, okay, you try walking on this leg with this foot, on this ankle. Like, it's very painful, and I don't want to be on pain pills. I don't want to be on all drugged up with pain medication nowadays, because I know, in the future I'm really going to need it. So I'm actually waiting. I'm holding off on the pain meds. So I just do my own pain management, right, for now, because I've been in pain forever. So I'm just waiting, because I know I'm going to need drugs, heavy duty drugs, when I get older, if I live that long. So, loss of energy. I mean, it's hard sometimes just to do things, Sometimes the housework doesn't get done. But I'm not too hard on myself. I don't sit there and say, oh, I didn't do this and I didn't do that, and then become really down on myself, because we could easily do that too, right? Or I should have done this, and I didn't get the laundry done, and I didn't get the grocery shopping done. We got to kind of sometimes cut ourselves a little bit of slack and not be too hard on ourselves, because really, if you've been sexually abused or you've been abused in any way, we deserve a break. You know what I mean? We're not going to get everything perfect, and who does? A lot of people are really hard on themselves with stuff like that, and then we become our own worst enemy, just dragging ourselves through the mud because we're not living up to our own expectations. And some of that's okay for a challenge for yourself, like for me, like to say, well, yeah, I need to get things done, I need to take care of things, There's nothing wrong with a little challenge, to say, well, come on, I need to pull myself up and get, some things done. But as far as coming down on myself, because maybe one day I was just really just too exhausted, or I just had a bad day, just flashbacks or thinking about the abuse or whatever, I just allow myself to live. And I don't put too much pressure on myself. So lots of things don't get done, and that's a fact. And my sweetheart kind of sometimes is, he's terminally ill, so he doesn't have a whole lot of energy to do things. He does try to help out around the place, but he's terminally ill. He's very sick, So he has days where he can't do anything. So the two of us, I mean, most people would be like, man, look at those guys, they're lazy. But if they really knew what the situation was, they'd be like, oh, well, okay, we'll cut you some slack. So we have to cut ourselves some slack too, Like sometimes we just can't, things just don't get done. So what we do is we just say, well, maybe another day, I'll try that again tomorrow. That's what I do. If I put things off because I've just had a day where I just don't have the energy and I don't, I just can't do it. But I think for this stuff they're talking about for the depression because of sexual abuse, that no energy thing would be like if you just never get anything done and just laying around depressed in a depressed state. That's a serious sign of depression. And like, my mother stayed her whole life in that, right? It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing at all. And we do deserve to get help, right? So if you are suffering with that, make sure you get some help. Physical symptoms, headaches, backaches, physical aches and pains are common. This is with depression, right? The pain is real, but the cause may be attributed to your depression rather than strictly a medical problem. So it says here, do you keep going to the doctor with physical symptoms, but the doctor can't find a medical reason for your symptoms? This is a question she asks, right? I mean, and that's just the case of it. Excuse me, I've talked to so many people. I know so many survivors because of what I do. Who have serious issues, actual physical issues going on in their body, pain, and discomfort, and they go to the doctor, and the doctor says, well, I can't really see anything wrong here. And, sometimes it takes a long, long time to get a proper diagnosis, whether it's fibromyalgia or whatever. So many things attributed to abuse, you know what I mean, that sometimes it takes them a while to see, So people will go to the doctor, and they'll be like, I don't know, I've got these pains and, pains throughout my body and headaches and whatnot. And the doctors will be like, well, we just don't see anything wrong. And, this stuff can manifest in the body. Absolutely it can. And, that's why this woman says the pain is real, but the cause may be attributed to depression rather than strictly a medical problem. So it's hard on people, absolutely harsh on people. She says there can be a chemical imbalance that causes depressive symptoms, and sometimes medications may be warranted. With physical symptoms, it's always better to see a physician to get examined to determine the cause of your symptoms. And even if your symptoms are deemed to be psychological, sometimes medications are prescribed for a short period of time to help you through a difficult time. So she says there are other natural ways, such as herbal supplements, to approach your depressive state. However, you should always be cleared medically prior to taking any type of herbal supplement. And these symptoms, she says, behaviors are all range from minor to extreme. So if you're feeling the extreme symptoms, you should seek the help of a professional. She says, what is extreme? Like, that would be symptoms that prevent you from performing the tasks of your daily life, or thoughts of harming yourself or someone else. So she says, speak to your doctor, a family member, mental health professional, and for an evaluation for counseling or medication, or, as mentioned above, to start feeling better, right? She says, there's no need for you to continue to suffer in silence. Get help today. And, I mean, that's just so true. She says, at one time, this is this woman talking, she's a survivor, right? She says, at one time I was suicidal, and I'm here today because someone cared. So she says, I care about you, and so will other people. She says, so please call the suicide hotline now if you're feeling like harming yourself. There is hope. Don't give up. So many people, that's why I'm doing what I do, because so many people, as soon as I started to reach out, and I had just had always had suicidal tendencies and thoughts, and planning my suicide and whatnot. As soon as I started to reach out and get some help, all these hands came back to me, and they were like, you can do it. And I knew these people had been through, the same type of horrific stuff that I had been through, and, had suffered as I had as a child, and had been through some horrific things. And, here they are with their hands out to me saying, you can do this, you can do this. And that's why I do what I do, because I know, I'm so glad that I stuck around and made the right decision for myself. I'm about 5 years into my healing journey almost. Next April will be 5 years for me. And, before that, wasn't dealing with anything, you know what I mean? So, I was living, and I was, existing, but I'd always end up back in these depressed states and just feeling so down, and, just thinking, is this all this life is pain and torture and misery? Is this it, I can work and I can do things, and then I come home on the couch and I'm stuck with myself, oh my God, it was a horrible situation. So I'm glad I finally made the right choice, and that was to reach out and get some help, and also make a commitment to myself that I was never going to ever contemplate suicide again, and that because my family's suicidal, I talk about this a lot on my shows, right? And that suicide is not an option, and that I was gonna make it, And then I realized that by doing that, I win the fight against, the fight with my parents. I win this fight. They couldn't kill me, and they couldn't even get myself to kill me. Ha ha. And that's exactly how I feel about it. The two of my brothers killed themselves. One of my sisters wanted to kill herself, and my other sister, I think she doesn't want to kill herself. She just wants to die. And, one of my brothers just lives in his own little world, and he's the only one living now as far as the brothers go. But one of my brothers was murdered, so who knows what would have happened if he'd lived long enough. But, this is what our parents caused, right? And that was eating me alive. By the time I hit 41, and I was like, oh my God, I got to continue on in this pain. I got to continue on in this knowledge of what my parents did to us, and what my sibling had done to me, and I got to suffer this, and why? So I just wanted out of the pain. It's not necessarily that I wanted to kill myself, otherwise I would have killed myself years ago, because I had been suicidal really throughout since about 10 years old. So, I knew I didn't want to kill myself, and I was like, I don't want to do what my brothers did. I don't want to kill myself. But the thing is how am I going to get out of this pain? And I started to realize that I needed to do this. I was the one going to be responsible for getting myself some help, And I thought, man, I am not going to let my parents win this fight. No way. And I really got serious, and it took me one night, of another situation, one night of hell, where I actually decided to make the right choice. And I said, you know what, never again. Never again. I'm making a commitment right here, right now, God. I knew God was listening. And I said, I'm making a commitment that I will never, ever think about that ever again. I will never contemplate suicide. And I'm going to win this fight. And that is such a slap in my parents' face. It's not even funny. You know what I mean? That, to me, says I win. You know what I mean? You can't kill me. You couldn't kill me as a child, and now you can't even get me to kill myself. Ha ha. And so I win this fight, and that's great. Two of my brothers are dead. They lost. You know what I mean? They lost. They let my parents kill them so many years later. And so, I'm so happy and thankful, right? That's why, I just want to be another voice of encouragement for people to realize that we cannot allow our abusers to destroy us, not even at the age of 41, not even at the age of 50, not even at the age of 60. Like, we need to put them in their place, and that is to say, you cannot destroy me. You couldn't then, and you can't now, and I'm going to get some help. Because really, honestly, that's exactly what this is all about. Like, so many children, and young people, being abused, grow up and they say, and they let their abusers win the fight because they themselves destroy their own lives as adults. And that's really exactly what this is all about. And that's absolutely horrific, but hey, I was doing it myself. And the thing is like, I thought, oh, no, this change is here and now. And that was 5 years ago, almost 5 years ago. So I've done a lot of healing work and over that period of time. But I'm so glad I stuck around because I would not have ever found any peace in my heart if I would have just ended my life. So if you're having these suicidal thoughts and tendencies, you make sure that you get some help. You do not allow your abusers to, whoever they were, to win this fight. Not at all. You have to find a fight within you. You have to find that fight that says, you know what, you can't kill me. And you can't even get me to kill myself. Ha ha. Because honest to God, that's exactly what this is all about. And, make sure that you come out the winner, you know what I mean, by having a good life, by being good to yourself, by treating yourself well, by doing the right things by yourself, reaching out where you can, whatever kind of help you want to get, whether you decide just, counselor or therapist, or whether you just go, say, group support or just reaching out to friends. But whatever you do, you make sure that you just get some help, right? Like, don't allow yourself to be destroyed by this. This is not right. They didn't have the right to destroy us as children. They certainly didn't, whoever these people, these abusers are in our lives, They did not have the right to do that, but they did it anyway. And they certainly don't have the right now. And if we give in, if we give up, and we say, oh, it's just not worth it, and I'm not worth it, that was my mother. My mother was abused as a child, and she had that whole attitude. She was abused as a wife. She was just abused her whole life. And she was just like, oh, well, this is just my life, and it's just, she just had this victim mentality. She was just like, they won. And for my mom, in my mom's case, her abusive parents and my dad won, and it killed her. You know what I mean? Like, she was dead long before she was dead, right? And my mother did that to me. By the time I was 10, I was dead. Right. So I was dead long before I'm dead. I was dead, right? So that's the issue, do not allow the abusers to continue, to win this fight. No way. I got mad. I got angry. Anger's never really been a problem with me. I have no problem getting angry. And, I was sitting on the couch and I was so angry because I was going to hurt myself. I was going to kill myself. And I started to get angry, and I thought, oh, my God, look what my parents are still doing to me. Look what my sibling is still doing to me. Like, at the age of 41, 20, 25, 30 years later, and and they still have control, and they're still causing me to want to killing me, you know what I mean? And they don't have the right. And so, I decided, oh, no, I'm taking this back, and this is going to be my fight, and I'm going to win. So that's, I'm glad that I made that choice, and I hope that you will too. So she talks about, there is some helpful resources she has here on her page for depression. So she says, do you need help with depression? Try Joy Life Therapeutics. So she talks about full body therapeutic table massage and stuff, and a life-changing ebook she's got here. There's all kinds of info on drug addiction and alcohol. If you can just click on that, there's an ebook there for self-help for depression. So I'll probably grab that, especially because a lot of these things are free, right? So I may as well get a free ebook. And then she, below she's got some links to different things. She's got to if you want to know more about depression and whatnot. If you scroll down to the bottom of the page, she's got more information there. So this is a great website. Like, I really, appreciate what she's done here. I don't know anything about this woman, but I know that I like her information because she's a survivor herself. So she knows, what it's like. And so like she says, if you've suicidal thoughts or when you think about killing yourself. She says this is even more serious if you plan how you're going to do it. So she says if you've gotten that far, run, don't walk for help. You know what I mean? Like she knows because she's been there, right? So it's just so important. So we'll take a look at. I kind of want to look through really the whole works here. The next portion of this is eating disorders, and she got information on PTSD as well, self-abusive behavior, sexual issues, victim to survivor, and whatnot. So eating disorders, she has there's like a little. You can download it or you can play it. There's something like a little audio thing there, or even maybe possibly a video. But it says anorexia, bulimia, and other eating disorders that she talks about. So she says anorexia, bulimia are two types of eating disorders associated with sexual abuse. And anorexia means the loss of appetite, eating very little or nothing at all. She says if you have this illness, you have an altered self-image. So she says when you look in the mirror at yourself, you don't see yourself as you really are. You can weigh 80 pounds and still see yourself as fat, and the behaviors with this illness are usually kept secret. So she says, do you get up in the morning and jog 10 miles, eat next to nothing, and obsess about your weight, meaning count every calorie you put in your body? Do you keep your eating habits and exercise a secret? So she says, if you can answer yes to these questions, then I'm talking to you. So she says, you may have started your dieting just like everyone else, just to lose a few pounds, or you thought that you would throw up after a couple of meals so that you would fit into a new dress, etc. The problem is that anorexia and bulimia both take over quickly, and even though you think you still have control, just like you have control over what you put in your mouth and what comes out of your mouth, the disease has the larger control over you. So she says maybe you get scared because you know that you can't stop what you're doing and are too afraid to ask for help. So she says this is a dangerous illness without treatment because the body needs food and nutrients to survive. So we all know that the opposite of survival is, well, let's just say it, not a good alternative, right? And so she goes on to talk about that. She says the problem with anorexia is that if you have it, you probably don't realize you have a problem, right? So she says it's usually someone else that points it out to you, and then it's annoying. Does that sound familiar to anyone? So if someone has mentioned anorexia to you, about you, listen, your life could be at risk and your life is precious. So she says, give yourself the chance to recover and discover the beauty you possess inside of you, even though you might not be able to see it right now. I know you probably have heard all this before and it sounds like blah, 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 just this once. Just this once, she says, listen to what I have to say. She says, I'm not your mom, your husband, your best friend, or your counselor. I'm someone who understands what you're doing. I know that it feels good to have control over what you put into your body. So she says it is probably the only control that you think you have. And then she goes on to talk about bulimia. Well, that's just it, see, and that's why a lot of people, they have a hard time stopping, right? Because it is totally an issue of control. And, I don't have eating disorders, really. I just eat too much. I'm a little bit overweight all the time. But I've never had any real problems with food. Like, I was talking about that yesterday. I don't have the issues of I've got 5 pounds, I'm fat, and I really need to lose weight and, starve myself to do it. You know what I mean? Like I really just don't do that because I enjoy food way too much. My problem is I eat a little bit too much. And I have, portions control problems. Like, it's kind of like, I like the big plates for dinner, and, I don't want to eat like a small plate of food. Like when I'm hungry, I want to eat like a nice sized portion of food. So I tend to eat too much for the amount of exercise that I do. So I'm always about 20 pounds, 30 pounds overweight. But I'm kind of a little bit tall, so I can sort of carry it. You know what I mean? But it's really hard on my body, and so I have a hard time losing it because I don't exercise. But I refuse to go on a diet because I really like food. So that's the whole issue, right? So I'm always a little bit overweight. So I don't care. I'm like, you know what? I'm like halfway to 50. I really don't care. It's not like I'm trying to attract Tarzan or something. The issue is that do we feel good about ourselves? That's where it comes down to. Like when I look in the mirror, as an adult, 45-year-old woman, when I look in the mirror, I see myself as an abused child. That's where my problems are. It's not just that I see this unattractive woman who could lose a few pounds, right? I see the wounded parts of myself, really. From so long ago. I remember looking in the mirror as a young person and looking at my body, just looking at the wounds, like my mother would beat me and the bruises and the scars and the marks and the welts and stuff, and that stuff stays with me, you know what I mean? Like I still have not been able to change that image, But I also have that self-esteem from being sexually abused as an 8-year-old. So I hated my body after that, and I hated my body before that, but I especially hated it after that. And so I've never really had a good self-image, like self-body image. But I've been dealing with it in pretty healthy ways. Like I don't, like I just deal with it. You know what I mean? Like I'm not completely happy with it. Like I'm not happy with my vision or my view of myself. But yeah, my show, like it says it's still going, but I think that it's over because of the time. So I have no idea if I'm still streaming or if anybody can hear me or what. But the show is, I'm not sure if it's scheduled for, maybe that's because it was supposed to go for 60 minutes, but it's 6:30, so I'm going to have to cut it off. But what we'll do is we'll pick up back here tomorrow morning. And, we'll continue looking at this. I want to look at the bulimia part and some of the other stuff she's got here about the eating disorders. But yeah, this is the thing, self-image, a lot of people who've been abused have poor self-image, But even people that were not abused will sometimes have poor self-image, It doesn't always stem from abuse. But it's just that if a person's been abused, it just makes it that much worse, you know what I mean? Because everything seems to be a little bit harder, you know what I mean? Because then it's no wonder. Any kind of trauma will sear the brain. It just, trauma just scores the brain. And it just, if some, really some chemical physio process that takes place when you deal with when you've been put through trauma, especially as a child, that puts markers on your brain, and then those markers will set the tone, really, because that marker is really what makes us who we are. You know what I mean? And so, as far as having a self-poor image, I mean, I had a self-poor image when I was a child. So, for me, things really changed in that area. You know what I mean? I don't, when I dress up or whatever, go to work or whatever, I feel like, okay, I look half decent. I don't mind going out the door. I don't feel like I'm just so disgusting that I can't go out the door. But my own personal feelings on my own body, most of the time I actually ignore it. You know what I mean? Because I don't want to get too involved in taking a look at how I feel about my body. Because I feel like, well, okay, then I'll just end up depressed, because I actually really don't. I look at body as a wounded thing, that was just so wounded and degraded and ugly and horrible. And I still do that, except for I don't hurt myself. There's a lot of people out there that will do that, and they don't want to self-injure, or they'll want to cut, or they'll want to hurt somebody else or hurt themselves. Where, for me, I just deal with it. So I don't have, the same maybe severity of issues that a lot of people may have with poor body, poor self-image, poor body image. But I know that I still do have problems with it, you bet. And especially being a woman, because I was raped and sodomized at the age of 8 years old. I watched my dad rape my mother in front of me when I was 6 years old. There was a lot of sexual violence in my home, and then me being abused and sexually by my brother. I hated my breasts. I hated my body, right? That didn't mean I wanted to go hack off my breasts. I didn't want to go cut my breasts off or get some sort of an operation. What it meant to me is that I could never really enjoy my body. You know what I mean? And that's really a shame. That's really unfortunate. That's why I'm really working on changing all of this, right? Because I deserve to have a good life just like everybody else. It's not my fault that this stuff happened to me. This is my abuser's fault. The shame doesn't lie with me. It lies with them. You know what I mean? And so we have to learn how to love ourselves. That means our whole selves. And that's what I'm working on. Not just learning how to love myself and, spiritually, or learning how to love myself emotionally or whatever. I have to learn how to love all the parts of myself, which I'm really trying to do. I still haven't figured it out. But that's why I'm still on my healing journey, right? Eventually I'd like to get there, So have a great day, everybody. Make sure you stick around. Get some help, Reach out to somebody, but do not suffer in silence. Do not continue to suffer on in silence. And make sure that you get help, where you can. You have to be careful who you trust. So if you're going to reach out to people, make sure they're trustworthy, good people with good hearts that are not going to take advantage of you, that they're not going to hurt you even further because they're ignorant. Be very, very careful who you get involved with. There's some really hurtful people out there, and a lot of times they don't know that they're so ignorant. They don't even realize it. They just don't know how to handle or deal with people who've been so mistreated and so abused, right? So make sure if you do reach out, that you're reaching out to people that that are decent people that are going to look after the relationship with you, instead of just make you feel worse than you already do. And online group support is good. I really like that because I believe there's safety in numbers, and you can also remain anonymous. You can pick a fake name and go on there, and you can get help, from many different people, and sometimes there's psychologists on there and psychiatrists and whatnot that will, therapists, counselors and whatnot that will be on those sites that will help people with general questions and stuff. So, online survivor sites are great. Whatever you do, make sure you stick around for another day. And it's hard. Some days are better than others. Some nights are better than others. There's always going to be hard times, even for people who are not abused. I mean, we got to be realistic, right? Life is not this bed of roses, right? There's going to be hard times and hard days, and stuff is going to be hard. But we have to stick it out for the good days, right? And look for those good days, look for those better days, and appreciate them when they do come. There's always going to be some bad day in there. We already know that. That's life. But as growing up abused, we've had our share of bad times, And so sometimes people think, I just can't do another day. That used to be my mother, she was suicidal, right? And so then I grew up like that, so I thought I couldn't do another day. And I'm so glad I figured out that I can do all the days necessary and all the nights necessary to get through this. I've been through the worst of it. I've already been abused, you know what I mean? So now it's just up to me, to make sure that I get the help that I need, right? It's up to us, right? So have a great day, everybody, and we'll talk to you later. I'll be back on tomorrow morning, same time, same place. And if you need something, you can leave a message for me here on Blog Talk Radio or whatnot. I'll be around tonight. Contact me on Facebook or whatever. Talk to you real soon. Take good care of yourselves. Bye-bye.